Samantha's eyes were fixed on the scrolling data, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she cross-referenced the anomalous signal against every known transmission in the database. Nothing matched. The signal's frequency, amplitude, and modulation were all completely foreign. A thrill of excitement coursed through her. This was it, the breakthrough she had been waiting for. She quickly alerted the rest of her team at the National Radio Astronomy Observatory. Within minutes, the facility was abuzz with activity as astronomers and physicists rushed to confirm the discovery. Samantha's colleague, Dr. Michael Connors, hurried over to her console, his brow furrowed in concentration. "You're sure about this?" he asked, scanning the readouts with skeptical eyes. "Positive," Samantha replied, her voice taut with barely contained enthusiasm. "The signal is originating from the Gliese 667 system, nearly 23 light-years away. But the energy output is off the charts. There's no way a natural phenomenon could produce something this powerful." Michael nodded slowly, his expression shifting from doubt to wonder. "An extraterrestrial transmission," he breathed. "If this is what I think it is, Samantha, we may be on the verge of the most significant scientific discovery in human history." The rest of the team had gathered around, listening intently. Samantha felt a surge of pride as she addressed the group. "We need to act quickly. I've already notified the IAU and HFY. They're scrambling to get their observatories focused on the target coordinates. But we need to be the ones to crack this thing wide open." She turned back to her console, her fingers flying across the keys as she accessed the observatory's most powerful instruments. "We'll start by running a detailed spectral analysis, see if we can glean any clues about the signal's origin and composition. Then we'll try to establish some kind of two-way communication." Samantha paused, her gaze sweeping across the faces of her colleagues. "I know this is uncharted territory, but we've spent our entire careers searching for a moment like this. Are you all with me?" The team erupted in a chorus of enthusiastic affirmations, their eyes shining with a mixture of awe and determination. Samantha felt a surge of pride. These were the best and brightest minds in the field, and she knew they were more than ready for the challenge that lay ahead. As the team got to work, Samantha took a moment to gaze out the observatory's massive windows, her heart swelling with a sense of possibility. Out there, in the vast expanse of the cosmos, an alien civilization had reached out to them. What did they have to say? What could they teach humanity? The questions were endless, and Samantha couldn't wait to unravel the mysteries that lay beyond. For hours, the team worked tirelessly, analyzing the signal in painstaking detail. They mapped its precise coordinates, measured its wavelengths, and scoured the archives for any similar transmissions. But try as they might, they couldn't decipher the content of the message. It was as if the signal was intentionally encoded, a puzzle waiting to be solved. Finally, as the sun began to dip below the horizon, Samantha made a breakthrough. "I think I've found a pattern in the modulation," she announced, her voice brimming with excitement. "It's subtle, but it seems to be repeating in a specific sequence. If I'm right, this could be some kind of language, an attempt at communication." The team gathered around her console, their eyes fixed on the scrolling data. Samantha quickly wrote a program to isolate and amplify the subtle patterns, and within minutes, a series of rhythmic pulses began to emerge. "There," she exclaimed, pointing to the screen. "Do you hear that? It's almost like a binary code, but much more complex." Samantha's fingers flew across the keyboard, transcribing the sequence and feeding it into a translation algorithm she had developed years ago for just such an eventuality. Slowly, painfully, the program began to decipher the alien message. At first, the words were garbled and disjointed, but as the algorithm refined its parameters, a clear message began to take shape. "It's a warning." Samantha breathed, her face paling as she read the translated text. "They're telling us that something is coming. Something terrible." The rest of the team fell silent, the weight of Samantha's words hanging in the air. Samantha felt her heart racing, a mixture of fear and exhilaration coursing through her veins. After all these years of searching, they had finally made contact with an extraterrestrial civilization. But the message they had received was anything but reassuring. Samantha turned to her colleagues, her eyes narrowing with determination. "We need to get this information to the proper authorities immediately. The fate of the entire planet may be at stake." As the team sprang into action, Samantha couldn't help but wonder what else the alien signal might reveal. What secrets did it hold, and what did this mysterious civilization know that humanity did not? One thing was certain: their lives were about to change forever. In the hours that followed Samantha's startling discovery, the world descended into chaos. As the National Radio Astronomy Observatory relayed the translation of the alien message to government officials, the unthinkable happened. Every satellite, space station, and interplanetary probe went dark. Global communications networks collapsed, leaving the nations of Earth isolated and confused. Samantha and her team stared in disbelief as one by one the telemetry feeds from their instruments winked out. "What's happening?" she cried, her fingers flying across the keyboard in a desperate attempt to reestablish contact. Dr. Connors shook his head grimly. "I don't know, but whatever it is, it's global. We've lost all communication with the rest of the world." Panic began to set in as the implications of the blackout sank in. Without satellites, air travel was grounded, GPS systems were rendered useless, and the world's financial markets ground to a halt. In the halls of power, leaders wrestled with the terrifying possibilities. Had first contact with an alien civilization gone horribly wrong? Samantha felt a growing sense of dread as she watched the chaos unfold. The alien message had warned of a looming threat, and now it seemed that threat had arrived. But what could she and her team do, isolated in their remote observatory, cut off from the rest of the world? As night fell, the situation only worsened. With no functioning communication networks, the flow of information ground to a halt. Rumors and speculation ran rampant, fueling fear and uncertainty. Some believed the blackout was the result of a devastating EMP attack, while others suspected a cyber attack orchestrated by a rival power. Samantha and her colleagues huddled around the emergency radio, desperate for any scrap of news. But the airwaves were eerily silent, save for the occasional burst of static. "We need to get this information to the authorities," Samantha insisted, her voice tinged with desperation. "They need to know about the alien message, about the threat that's coming. If we don't, the entire world could be in grave danger." But as they scrambled to find a way to transmit their findings, they realized the futility of their efforts. Without access to the global communication infrastructure, their message would never reach the outside world. Days passed, and the blackout showed no signs of abating. Supplies began to dwindle, and tempers flared as the team grappled with the mounting crisis. Samantha, once the picture of calm professionalism, found herself consumed by a sense of helplessness and fear. "There has to be something we can do," she pleaded, pacing the length of the observatory. "We can't just sit here and wait for whatever's coming to arrive. We have to find a way to warn the world." Dr. Connors placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "I know how you feel, Samantha, but we're only a small piece of this puzzle. Right now, our best chance is to hunker down and wait for the blackout to be resolved." Samantha opened her mouth to protest, but a sudden flicker of light on the horizon cut her off. She whirled around, her eyes widening as she caught sight of a distant glow. "Look!" she cried, pointing toward the source of the light. The team rushed to the windows, peering out into the darkness. As they watched, the faint glow began to intensify, slowly coalescing into a series of bright, pulsating shades. "What is that?" Connors murmured, his voice tinged with awe and fear. Samantha's heart raced as she studied the strange phenomenon. I don't know, but I have a feeling we're about to find out." The team held their breath, transfixed by the mesmerizing display. Suddenly, The pulsing lights erupted into a brilliant cascade of energy, bathing the entire area in an eerie, otherworldly glow. Samantha felt a chill run down her spine as she watched the spectacle unfold. "This can't be good," she whispered, her voice trembling. For what seemed like an eternity, the team stood in stunned silence, their eyes fixed on the alien lights. Then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the glow began to fade, leaving behind an unsettling silence. Samantha turned to her colleagues, her face etched with a mixture of fear and determination. "We need to get back to work. If that signal is connected to the blackout, and the alien message is to be believed, then we may be the only ones who can figure out what's happening." The team nodded in agreement, their resolve hardening in the face of the growing crisis. Samantha knew that the stakes had never been higher, but she was more determined than ever to uncover the truth. As the team set to work, Samantha couldn't help but wonder what other secrets the alien signal might hold. What was the nature of the terrible threat that was coming, and how could they possibly prepare for it? With the world cut off from the outside, the fate of humanity now rested squarely on their shoulders. Samantha took a deep breath, steeling herself for the challenges that lay ahead. Whatever happened next, she was determined to be ready. As the blackout stretched on, theories and speculation about the cause ran rampant across the globe. With communications networks crippled, information trickled in slowly, fueling a growing sense of panic and uncertainty. In the corridors of power, world leaders convened emergency meetings, wrestling with the terrifying implications of the blackout. Some believed the strange signal from the Gliese 667 system had somehow triggered a devastating electromagnetic pulse, frying the delicate electronics that underpin modern civilization. Others suspected a large-scale cyber attack, orchestrated by a rival nation or rogue group intent on sowing chaos. But a growing number of experts, including Samantha and her team at the National Radio Astronomy Observatory, came to a more unsettling conclusion. The blackout was the work of an extraterrestrial intelligence, one whose intentions remained shrouded in mystery. Everything points to an intentional act, Samantha argued passionately during a hastily arranged video conference with government officials. The precision with which the blackout was executed, the timing to coincide with the alien transmission, it's all too deliberate to be a natural phenomenon or random attack. The leaders on the call listened intently, their brows furrowed with concern. "And you believe this? Alien civilization is responsible?" one of them asked skeptically. Samantha nodded, her expression grave. "That's the only logical explanation we can come up with. The signal we intercepted was clearly a message, a warning of some kind. And now, mere days later, we're facing a global catastrophe." "But what do they want?" another official interjected, his voice trembling. "If they have the power to cripple our entire technological infrastructure, what could they possibly hope to gain?" Samantha's gaze met each of theirs in turn, her eyes reflecting the weight of the world. "I wish I knew," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "All we can say for certain is that they've made their presence known, and whatever they have planned, it doesn't bode well for humanity." The leaders fell silent, the gravity of the situation sinking in. For a long moment, the only sound was the hiss of static from the aging video conferencing equipment. Then, one by one, they began to speak, their voices tinged with a mixture of fear and determination. "We need to act quickly," the President of the United States declared, his brow furrowed with resolve. "Whatever this alien threat may be, we can't afford to sit idly by. We need to marshal every resource at our disposal to try and uncover the truth and prepare for the worst." The others nodded in agreement, their expressions hardening. "Agreed," the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom said, her voice steady and commanding. "We'll need to coordinate a global response, pool our knowledge and capabilities. If we're going to have any chance of weathering this storm, we'll need to work together, as a species." Samantha listened intently, her heart swelling with a mixture of hope and trepidation. She knew that the stakes had never been higher, and that the decisions made in the coming days and weeks could determine the very fate of humanity. But she also recognized the immense power of human ingenuity and determination when faced with adversity. As the video conference drew to a close, Samantha turned to her team, her gaze sweeping across their faces. "You heard them," she said, her voice firm and resolute. "We need to redouble our efforts, leave no stone unturned. Whatever's coming, we have to be ready." The team nodded in unison, their eyes alight with a newfound sense of purpose. Samantha could feel the energy in the room shifting, the fear and uncertainty giving way to a steely resolve. In the days that followed, the team worked tirelessly, analyzing every scrap of data they could gather. They combed through the archives, searching for any historical precedents or clues that might shed light on the alien signal and its connection to the blackout. They ran simulations, tested hypotheses, and explored every possible avenue of research, all while staying in constant communication with the global coalition of leaders and scientists. But as the days turned into weeks and the blackout showed no signs of abating, Samantha began to feel a growing sense of dread. Whatever was coming, it was clear that it would take more than just their collective knowledge and determination to confront it. They would need resources, technology, and a level of global coordination that had never before been achieved in human history. And as the world held its breath, waiting in fearful anticipation, Samantha knew that the time for action was quickly running out. Amid the chaos and uncertainty that gripped the world, Samantha and her team at the National Radio Astronomy Observatory refused to give in to despair. They worked tirelessly, driven by a determination to uncover the truth and find a way to warn the global community of the looming threat. But as the blackout stretched on, with no sign of a resolution, even Samantha's unwavering optimism began to waver. The team had exhausted every avenue of research, analyzed every scrap of data they could gather, and yet they still had no clear understanding of what was causing the global communications breakdown. One evening, as Samantha was poring over a series of complex spectral readouts, a sudden flicker of light on the horizon caught her eye. She froze, her heart racing as she stared intently at the distant glow. "Michael," she called out, her voice taut with urgency. "Come take a look at this." Her colleague hurried over, his brow furrowed with concern. "What is it?" he asked, his gaze fixed on the window. "I'm not sure," Samantha replied, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she adjusted the observatory sensors. "But it looks like we might have a signal. A real one, not just static." Michael leaned in, his eyes widening as the data scrolled across the screen. "You're right," he breathed, a glimmer of hope in his voice. "It's faint, but it's definitely a transmission. And it's not coming from any of our usual sources." Samantha felt a surge of excitement as she recognized the familiar patterns of the signal. "It's a communications relay," she exclaimed, her fingers dancing across the controls. "One that somehow managed to stay online throughout the blackout." Michael nodded, his expression shifting from cautious optimism to determination. "If we can piggyback on that signal, we might be able to establish a link with the outside world. Maybe even get a message out." Without wasting another moment, the two scientists set to work, their hands moving with a sense of urgency that bordered on desperation. They tweaked the observatory's equipment, fine-tuning the receivers and amplifiers to hone in on the elusive transmission. As they worked, the rest of the team gathered around, their eyes fixed on the screens as they watched the progress unfold. The air was thick with tension, everyone holding their breath, praying that their efforts would bear fruit. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Samantha let out a triumphant cry. "I've got it," she exclaimed, her fingers flying across the keyboard. "I'm establishing a link." The team erupted in a chorus of cheers, their faces alight with a renewed sense of hope. Samantha quickly typed out a message, her heart pounding as she transmitted it into the void. "This is Dr. Samantha Chen of the National Radio Astronomy Observatory," the message read. "We have crucial information regarding the global blackout and a potential extraterrestrial threat. Please respond if you can hear this." For long, agonizing moments, there was only silence. Then, a crackle of static, followed by a faint voice. "Dr. Chen, this is Colonel James Harrington, United States Space Force. We copy your transmission. Please stand by for further instructions." Samantha felt a surge of relief wash over her shoulders sagging as the tension drained from her body. "They heard us," she breathed, a smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. "We're not alone in this." The team erupted in a flurry of celebration, congratulating one another on their hard-won victory. But Samantha knew that the real work was just beginning. The alien message had warned of a looming threat, and if they were going to have any chance of surviving it, they would need to work closely with the world's governments and military forces. As the connection with Colonel Harrington solidified, Samantha outlined the details of their discovery, including the translation of the alien transmission and the strange phenomena they had witnessed in the skies. The colonel listened intently, his brow furrowed with a mixture of concern and determination. "This is disturbing news, Dr. Chen," he said, his voice grave. "We've been monitoring similar events around the globe, but we've been unable to establish any clear pattern or source. This extraterrestrial connection could be the key to unraveling the mystery." Samantha nodded, her expression solemn. "We believe so as well, Colonel. That's why we need to work together, pool our resources and expertise. Whatever's coming, we can't afford to face it alone." Harrington's response was immediate and resolute. "Understood, Doctor. I'll relay your findings to the Joint Chiefs immediately. We'll coordinate a global response and get you all the support you need. This is a top priority." As the connection crackled and faded, Samantha turned to her team, her eyes shining with a new determination. "You heard the Colonel," she said, her voice steady and commanding. "It's time to gear up. We've got a planet to save." The team responded with a renewed sense of purpose, their faces etched with a fierce determination. Samantha knew that the road ahead would be arduous, but she also knew that they were up to the challenge. Whatever the alien civilization had in store for them, they would face it together, united in their quest to protect their home and their species. As Samantha and her team at the National Radio Astronomy Observatory worked tirelessly to maintain their tenuous communication link with the outside world, the rest of the planet remained shrouded in uncertainty. The global blackout had crippled the infrastructure that underpinned modern civilization, leaving the world's population confused, frightened, and dangerously isolated. But while the nations of Earth struggled to cope with the crisis, Samantha and her colleagues were laser-focused on deciphering the alien transmission and uncovering the truth behind the looming threat. Through their ongoing dialogue with Colonel Harrington and the Joint Military Command, the team had learned that the strange phenomenon they had witnessed in the skies was not an isolated incident. Reports were flooding in from all over the globe, describing similar displays of pulsating, otherworldly lights. However, the true nature and purpose of these events remained a mystery. Determined to unravel the puzzle, Samantha and her team pored over the data, scrutinizing every detail of the alien signal. They ran simulations, tested hypotheses, and explored every possible avenue of research, all while maintaining a constant vigil over the fragile communication link. "There has to be something we're missing," Samantha muttered, her brow furrowed in concentration as she studied the spectral readouts. "The message is too complex, too deliberate to be a simple warning." Dr. Connors, her closest colleague, nodded in agreement. "I know what you mean. There's an underlying structure, a rhythm to the transmission that suggests it's more than just a random sequence of data." Samantha's fingers danced across the keyboard as she adjusted the filters, fine-tuning the analysis. "Exactly. It's almost like a language, a way of communicating that we've never encountered before." The rest of the team gathered around, their eyes fixed on the screens as they watched the data unfold. Suddenly, Samantha let out a triumphant cry. "I've got it," she exclaimed, her voice brimming with excitement. "The modulation, the cadence, it's a form of communication, not just a message. And I think I know how to translate it." Without wasting a moment, Samantha set to work, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she fed the data into a series of complex algorithms. The rest of the team watched in rapt attention, holding their breath as the translation process unfolded. After what felt like an eternity, the computer screen flickered to life, and a series of words began to appear, slowly coalescing into a coherent message. Samantha felt a chill run down her spine as she read the translated text. "It's a warning," she breathed, her voice barely above a whisper. "They're telling us that something is coming. Something terrible." The team fell silent, the weight of Samantha's words hanging in the air. Dr. Connors was the first to break the silence, his voice trembling with a mixture of fear and awe. "What do they mean? Something terrible?" he asked, his gaze fixed on the screen. "What kind of threat are we talking about?" Samantha shook her head slowly, her expression grave. "I'm not sure, but based on the way they phrased it, I don't think it's something we're equipped to handle. They're warning us, Michael, warning us to prepare for something that could be catastrophic, not just for our civilization, but for our entire species." The team exchanged anxious glances, the realization of what they were facing slowly sinking in. Samantha could see the fear and uncertainty in their eyes, and she knew that she needed to act quickly to rally them. "Listen up, everyone," she said, her voice firm and commanding. "I know this is terrifying, but we can't afford to panic. We have to stay focused, use every resource at our disposal to try and understand what we're up against." She turned to the communication console, her fingers poised over the keys. "I'm going to relay this information to Colonel Harrington and the Joint Command. They need to know what we've discovered, and they need to start preparing the world for whatever's coming." As Samantha's fingers danced across the keyboard, sending the translated message to the outside world, a sense of dread began to creep into the pit of her stomach. She knew that the stakes had never been higher, and that the fate of the entire planet now rested on her shoulders. But even as the weight of that responsibility threatened to overwhelm her, Samantha felt a surge of determination. She had dedicated her life to the pursuit of knowledge, to uncovering the mysteries of the universe. And now, in the face of this unprecedented challenge, she was more determined than ever to rise to the occasion. Whatever the alien civilization had in store for them, she and her team would be ready. They would leave no stone unturned, work tirelessly to decipher the message and prepare the world for the looming threat. And if necessary, they would find a way to confront it, to defend their home and their species, no matter the cost. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear: the clock was ticking, and the fate of humanity hung in the balance. In the aftermath of Samantha's startling discovery, the world's leaders sprang into action. The translated message from the alien civilization had painted a dire picture, warning of a looming threat that could have catastrophic consequences for humanity. With the global communications blackout still in full effect, the nations of Earth were forced to set aside their differences and unite in a desperate effort to ready the planet for the impending danger. Time was of the essence, and they knew that failure was not an option. Across the globe, massive construction projects were launched, each one designed to shield the world from the unknown perils that lurked in the void. Vast arrays of powerful transmitters and receivers were hastily assembled, their purpose to reestablish global communication and provide early warning of any incoming attack. At the same time, teams of the brightest scientific minds were assembled, tasked with deciphering the alien message and uncovering the true nature of the threat. Samantha and her colleagues at the National Radio Astronomy Observatory were at the forefront of this effort, working around the clock to provide critical intelligence and guidance. As the weeks turned into months, the world held its breath, waiting with a mixture of fear and determination. The blackout had crippled economies, disrupted supply chains, and sown chaos across the planet. But the global community remained steadfast in its resolve. "We cannot afford to fail," the UN Secretary-General declared in a rare televised address, his face etched with the weight of his words. "The survival of our species depends on our ability to work together, to harness every resource at our disposal to meet this challenge head-on. The words resonated across the world, galvanizing the public and fueling a renewed sense of purpose. Volunteers flocked to support the massive construction efforts, while scientists and technicians from every corner of the globe lent their expertise to the ever-growing task force. Samantha watched the unfolding events with a mixture of pride and trepidation. She knew that the work they were doing was vital, but the constant pressure and the uncertainty of the situation weighed heavily on her. What if it's not enough? She confided to Dr. Connors one evening, as they pored over the latest data from the alien transmission. What if we can't decipher the message in time? What if the threat is beyond our ability to counteract? Connors placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder, his expression solemn. Then we'll have to find a way, Samantha. We can't afford to give in to doubt. Not now. Too much is at stake. Samantha nodded, drawing strength from her colleague's unwavering resolve. You're right. We've come too far to give up. We have to keep pushing, keep searching for answers. As the global effort to prepare for the alien threat continued to escalate, Samantha and her team worked tirelessly, their determination fueling their every move. They analyzed the signal in ever greater detail, searching for clues that might unlock the secrets of the extraterrestrial civilization. But as the deadline approached, doubts began to surface, even among the most steadfast supporters of the project. The immense scale and complexity of the task proved daunting, and the constant stream of setbacks and obstacles threatened to sap the world's resolve. In the halls of power, leaders grappled with the growing sense of uncertainty, their once unwavering confidence beginning to waver. The construction projects were plagued by delays and technical issues, and the scientific community's progress in deciphering the alien message seemed painfully slow. Samantha could feel the tension in the air as she attended the latest round of high-level briefings, her heart sinking with each passing day. The weight of the world's expectations was crushing, and she knew that their efforts might not be enough to stave off the impending disaster. But even as the doubts crept in, Samantha refused to give up. She knew that the fate of humanity hung in the balance, and she was determined to do whatever it took to ensure their survival. As the final hours ticked away, Samantha and her team redoubled their efforts, pouring every ounce of their collective knowledge and skill into the task at hand. They worked with an intensity that bordered on the obsessive, driven by a single-minded focus to uncover the truth and protect their home. And as the world held its breath, waiting with bated anticipation, Samantha knew that the moment of reckoning was fast approaching. Whatever the alien civilization had in store for them, they would be ready. Or at least, she hoped they would be. As the final hours approached, the tension across the globe reached a fever pitch. The world's leaders, scientists, and military forces had poured every resource at their disposal into preparing for the looming alien threat, but the uncertainty of the situation weighed heavily on everyone. Samantha and her team at the National Radio Astronomy Observatory had been at the center of the effort, working tirelessly to decipher the alien message and provide critical intelligence to the global coalition. But even they could not shake the sense of foreboding that had settled over them like a heavy fog. And then, without warning, the skies over Earth erupted in a blaze of light. Samantha and her colleagues watched in awe and terror as a massive alien armada emerged from the void, its ships unlike anything they had ever seen. The vessels were sleek and angular, their surfaces seemingly alive with a pulsing energy that defied all known scientific principles. "My God," Dr. Connors breathed, his voice barely above a whisper. "They're really here." Samantha felt her heart racing as she studied the approaching ships, her mind racing to process the implications. The alien message had warned of a terrible threat, and now that threat had arrived, looming over the planet like a dark harbinger of doom. Around the world, the reaction was one of sheer panic. Sirens blared, and chaos reigned as people scrambled to find shelter, unsure of what was to come. The military forces, despite their extensive preparations, found themselves woefully outmatched, their advanced weaponry and defensive systems rendered impotent in the face of the alien technology. Samantha and her team watched the unfolding events with a mixture of horror and disbelief. They had known that the stakes were high, but the reality of the situation was far more dire than any of them had imagined. "We have to get this information out there," Samantha said, her voice trembling. "The world needs to know what we're up against." But as she reached for the communication console, a sudden flicker of movement in the sky caught her eye. She gasped, her eyes widening as she watched the alien ships begin to deploy massive, intricate structures, not weapons, but devices that seemed to bathe the planet in a strange, pulsing energy. "What are they doing?" Connors asked, his brow furrowed with confusion. Samantha shook her head, her mind racing. I don't know. But whatever it is, it can't be good." The teen watched in rapt attention as the alien structures continued to unfurl, their complex designs and otherworldly energies defying all human understanding. Samantha felt a chill run down her spine as she realized that the world's worst fears might not be realized. This was not an invasion, but something far more inscrutable and potentially more dangerous. As the minutes ticked by, the global response remained chaotic and disorganized. The military forces, unable to mount an effective defense, struggled to maintain order and calm the panicked populace. And all the while, the alien structures continued to spread, their influence growing with each passing moment. Samantha knew that they needed to act quickly, to find a way to communicate with the extraterrestrial civilization and try to understand their intentions. But with the global communications network still in shambles, the task seemed almost insurmountable. "We have to try," she said, her voice resolute. "Even if we can't reach the outside world, we have to find a way to make contact. We can't just sit here and let this play out." Connors nodded, his expression grim. "I agree. But how? We've exhausted every avenue, and we're still no closer to understanding their language or their motives." Samantha's gaze swept across the faces of her team, searching for a glimmer of inspiration. "We have to think outside the box," she said, her mind racing. "There has to be a way to bridge the gap, to find a common ground that we can use to communicate." As the team fell silent, the sounds of the alien structures filled the air, their strange rhythms and pulsing energies creating an otherworldly symphony that sent shivers down Samantha's spine. And then, suddenly, an idea began to take shape in her mind. "That's it," she exclaimed, her eyes shining with newfound determination. "The message, the signal, it's not just a warning, it's a language. And if we can find a way to translate it, to respond in kind, maybe, just maybe, we can establish a connection." Connors stared at her, his expression a mixture of hope and skepticism. "You really think that's possible? After everything we've tried?" Samantha nodded, her jaw set with resolve. "I do, and we have to try. The fate of the world may depend on it." Without another word, she turned back to her console, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she set to work. The rest of the team followed suit, their own sense of purpose renewed by the glimmer of hope that had sparked in Samantha's eyes. Whatever lay in store for them, they knew that they could not afford to fail. The stakes were too high, the consequences too dire. They would find a way to communicate, to understand the intentions of the alien civilization, and to defend their home against the looming threat. Or they would die trying. As the alien structures continued to unfurl across the globe, bathing the planet in a strange, pulsing energy, Samantha and her team at the National Radio Astronomy Observatory worked tirelessly to establish a connection with the extraterrestrial civilization. The world held its breath, waiting with a mixture of fear and anticipation as the unprecedented events unfolded. The military forces, having exhausted their arsenal of conventional weapons, could only watch in helpless silence as the alien ships maintained their steady, unwavering approach. But Samantha refused to give in to despair. She knew that the fate of humanity hung in the balance, and she was determined to find a way to communicate, to understand the true intentions of the alien visitors. "There has to be a way," she murmured, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she fine-tuned the transmission algorithms. "We've cracked their language once before. We can do it again." Dr. Connors stood by her side, his expression a mixture of concern and resolve. "I hope you're right, Samantha. Because if we can't, I don't even want to think about what might happen." Samantha nodded grimly, the weight of the world's expectations bearing down on her. But even as the pressure mounted, she felt a glimmer of hope begin to take root. The alien civilization had made contact, had gone to great lengths to establish a connection with humanity. Surely, there must be some common ground, some means of bridging the gap between their two worlds. As the team worked tirelessly, analyzing the intricate patterns and rhythms of the alien signal, Samantha began to discern a subtle, underlying structure, a language, or at least the beginnings of one. It was unlike anything she had ever encountered, a complex tapestry of frequencies and modulations that defied all human understanding. But Samantha was undaunted. She had spent her entire career exploring the mysteries of the cosmos, and she was no stranger to the challenges of deciphering alien communication. With unwavering focus, she and her colleagues pored over the data, searching for the key that would unlock the secrets of the extraterrestrial civilization. And then, just as the situation seemed darkest, a breakthrough occurred. Samantha let out a triumphant cry as the transmission she had been working on began to take shape, the alien signal resolving into a coherent message. "We're doing it," she exclaimed, her eyes shining with excitement. "We're establishing a connection." The team gathered around, their faces etched with a mixture of wonder and trepidation as they watched the message unfold. Samantha's fingers flew across the keyboard, translating the alien language in real time and broadcasting the results to the world. As the content of the message became clear, a hush fell over the observatory. The alien civilization was not here to conquer or destroy, but to offer their aid and guidance, a startling revelation that left the global community reeling. "They recognize our potential," Samantha breathed, her voice tinged with awe. "They've come to help us, to usher in a new era of cooperation and technological advancement that will change the course of human history." The world listened in stunned silence as the translation continued, the alien message outlining a vision of a future where the two civilizations would work hand in hand, sharing knowledge and resources in a spirit of mutual understanding and respect. As the transmission concluded, Samantha turned to her colleagues, her expression a mixture of relief and wonder. "We did it," she whispered, a smile spreading across her face. "We made contact, and it's not what any of us expected." The team erupted into a chorus of cheers and congratulations, the weight of the world's worries lifting from their shoulders. Samantha felt a surge of pride and gratitude, knowing that their tireless efforts had paid off in ways they could scarcely have imagined. In the days and weeks that followed, the global community struggled to come to terms with the implications of the alien civilization's arrival. There were those who greeted the news with skepticism and fear, unwilling to trust the motives of the extraterrestrials. But as the initial shock wore off, a growing sense of hope and optimism began to take hold. Samantha and her team found themselves at the forefront of the worldwide effort to facilitate the integration of the two civilizations. They worked tirelessly, translating alien technology and scientific principles, paving the way for a new era of unprecedented collaboration and discovery. And as Samantha watched the world transform around her, she couldn't help but feel a sense of wonder and humility. The universe, it seemed, held far more mysteries than humanity had ever imagined, and with the arrival of the alien civilization, the future had never looked brighter. In the end, the threat that had loomed so large over the planet had not been one of destruction, but of transformation. And as Samantha looked out over the horizon, she knew that the dawn of a new age had truly begun.